Introduction to Last and First Men by William Olaf Stapledon. Good evening, listeners, and welcome to the new 2MNO Monero FM book show. I'm Craig, and I'll be reading a great classic of British science fiction over the next few months. The book we're talking about is Last and First Men by the English philosopher William Olaf Stapledon, first published in 1930. At the time, Stapledon was a lecturer in philosophy at the University of Liverpool, but the success of Last and First Men inspired him to become a full-time writer to help him spread his philosophical ideas. Last and First Men is an astonishing work which was almost forgotten for decades after its initial release, but it brought Stapledon great acclaim at the time of its publication. There had been works of science fiction printed before, but nothing, not even the classics by H.G. Wells, approached anything like the scale and ambition of Stapledon's work. Last and First Men is a chronicle and future history of humanity and its descendant species from the end of the First World War until the final extinction of our ultimate descendants on the planet Neptune 2 billion years in the future. It traces the rise and fall of 18 different human species throughout that time as they develop, live and die on 3 different planetary homes. Accidents and mischances drive them from Earth to Venus and later from Venus to Neptune. The capabilities and mental range of our descendants vary immensely and finally reach a supreme peak of intelligence and sanity in the 18th men before they are exterminated in a cosmic calamity. Intellectuals and statesmen including Bertrand Russell and Winston Churchill praised the work. Although his legacy has faded into an undeserved obscurity among modern science fiction fans, the same can't be said about the authors those modern fans admire. His work served as an inspiration for many of the great names of later 20th century science fiction, such as Arthur C. Clarke, Brian Aldiss, C.S. Lewis and Stan Lem. The physicist and futurist Freeman Dyson credited Stapledon with inspiring his speculation about stellar-scale artificial structures now known as Dyson spheres. Dyson has stated that he thinks they should properly be called Stapledon spheres. Last and First Men is a striking work, but it is not without its faults. Stapledon was a philosopher, not a scientist, and his understanding of the fields he needed to cover in his epics was not always up to par. Also, many of the scientific ideas of his time now appear quite dated. Nonetheless, he achieved great things with his efforts. We might be inclined to be less forgiving of some of the clangers he made with his judgment of near-term events, but in fairness, sometimes the short term can be the most difficult to predict. Still, there will be few people who won't raise an eyebrow at comments such as, after the European war, the defeated nation, formerly no less militaristic than the others, now became the most pacific and a stronghold of enlightenment. Almost everywhere, indeed, there had occurred a profound change of heart, but chiefly in Germany. Written 3 years prior to the victory of the Nazi Party in the German elections. Some of the assumptions about technical progress also look quaint from the perspective even of a decade following publication, let alone in the wake of the upheaval of the Second World War. Last and First Men was published 2 years before the discovery of the neutron and its attendant insight into nuclear processes which led to the rapid development of nuclear weapons and nuclear power, an accomplishment Stapledon portrayed as largely beyond the capability of our species. He placed the first expedition to the moon 400 million years in the future. Interestingly, he spoke of advanced biological techniques such as life extension and transgenic manipulation being applied even by our own species in the relatively short term. Similarly, many of the political and social attitudes and stances will appear dated to modern readers, such as the rather uncritical appraisal of the Soviet Union and its progress and the anachronistic accounts of European national rivalries. On the other hand, some aspects will appear startlingly prescient, such as the eventual overarching rivalry between the United States and China for influence over the globe. The concerns which ended the world state of the first men will also not seem too alien to our understanding, being an acute shortage of fossil fuel. Rather than concentrating on its faults, I recommend study of this work for its pioneering effort to bring modern scientific paradigms of vast stretches of time and space within the purview of human grasp and expanding the stage of history to embrace those cosmic scales of duration and extent. Further, Stapledon projected the dimension of evolution into his story in a similar manner, hinting at the vastness of potential future developments of the human spirit, in a sense scaling our being up into a phenomenon equal to the majesty of the background of the narrative. Whether he ultimately succeeded or failed, it was a noble attempt, and the mind of our culture is larger and better for it. I therefore pass now to the words of William Olaf Stapledon's own introduction to this seminal work, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did when I first discovered it many years ago. Introduction to